Hey guys, so as you know, I have a video called Daily Driving a Civic Si, and now I'm going to make the second part of that because I've done a little bit of work to this car. So I think I'm going to title the video Daily Driving a K-tuned Si. So I don't know if you've watched any of my other videos, but you'll notice that I changed the angle of the GoPro a little bit. A lot of people were saying that just the angle of it, you really couldn't see anything except the rear view mirror, so I lowered it a little bit, and I hope now you guys can go on the drive with me in a first-person view. So I run the TSP Stage 1 map on this car, and it's a great tune. Let me put it this way, it's a lot better of a tune than running the normal base maps or anything that the KTuner comes with originally. And I absolutely love TSP Stage 1. If you're looking for a tune, I think this is the best one to get. The on-the-fly map switching allows you to have normal boost levels all the way up to their custom 25 or 24.5 PSI tune. So it's really a nice balance. In a matter of 3 seconds, I can switch to how much boost I want this car to make. And I normally run it on the map 2. I noticed that if I do map 3 and put it in sport mode, my clutch just slips. And then at that point it's slower than if I was on map 2, and it's also tearing up my flywheel and my clutch. So I run map 2 all the time. I leave it in normal mode. Every so often I'll put it into sport mode if I'm on the highway or just haven't done it in a while and kind of want to get a nice launch with this car. But I don't really launch this car. I've never given it gas and then just dumped the clutch and let it take off. That's not what I want to do to my car. So I run this just kind of a normal daily driving car. So I think in some ways tuning the car was a great idea, but I think in other ways tuning the car was not for me. I really wanted to get this car tuned. I was so excited when I got the KTuner, but I don't know if it's for me, because I used to be able, when I had my 2018 Civic Si, I literally beat the crap out of it. Like, no hard crazy launches, but it was at the high RPMs like all the time. Every time I drove it, it was just, I don't know, like I assumed with a Honda it could take the abuse. So I was like, okay, well, this is a fun sporty car. I want to drive it how I want to drive it. So once I got my new one, I was still breaking it in, so I was being a little easy on it. I wasn't doing much. And then as soon as the break-in period was done, maybe 600 miles later, I got the KTuner. So once I got the KTuner, I was like, oh, this will be awesome. We'll have so much more power for this car. And it does have a lot more power for the car. But honestly, all it does is make me really nervous. Because if something goes wrong in this car, I'm not in a position where I can fix it. And I know I've said this in other videos, but if I say, for instance, that the flywheel goes, well, not only do I have to replace the clutch, I also have to replace the flywheel. And where I live, my living situation doesn't allow me to be able to do that work at home myself. So I'd have to pay someone to do it, and all said and done, I mean, it's probably close to $2,000 for a flywheel, the clutch, and installation. So I don't have $2,000. Well, I could save up for it, but this is my daily driver, so if something happens to it, I'm kind of screwed. So driving the car is so much fun, but you got to I have to get past the whole what if something happens. And as you can see on this drive, I don't beat the car, I don't drive it crazy. I just use it as my normal daily driver. But there's always that off chance that I've heard of people with the two-step and a cold engine, they blew their engine, I've heard of some people just having turbo issues in the long run. I mean, this is a leased car, so after the end of 3 years, it's kind of not my problem. But still, if a turbo goes during this lease, the dealership's going to look at me and go, well, that's not our problem. And then I got to find a new turbo for this thing, and that's not something I really want to be doing. So I really have kind of like a love-hate relationship with the KTuner. I love what it does to the car, but there's not enough solid evidence on how the car handles it. And then, so I baby it now. And that's not really my driving style. My last one, I'd go wide open throttle all the time. The tires would slip, take off, and just gun it. Well, in this, I don't really feel comfortable doing that anymore. And it kind of got rid of the whole fun factor of driving this car. So like sometimes I'll flash it back to the stock and drive for a week or so on it. That way it builds up a data log. If something ever happens, I figured maybe it'll have data logs and I can bring it back to the dealership and they won't see that it's completely cleared out and been reflashed. I was doing some research, and I think what I've come to the conclusion of is Honda doesn't really have a way to tell if you reflashed it, but the ECU does hold some logs. And if you blow up your engine and flash it back to stock and then bring it to the dealership and there's no logs, they're going to look at it and go, well, it was clearly flashed because there's no logs. If it was still stock, there'd be logs. You'd have all your driving history on it. So I don't think it's a bulletproof answer to kind of being able to drive this car how I want, but I figured it's better than nothing, and at least it protects me as much as I can. But the car drives so different than it did before. I mean, at the low RPMs, I'm even afraid to give it gas just because I know it's going to slip my clutch. And I've always wanted a Honda Civic that makes crazy horsepower, and this car isn't crazy horsepower, like I'm talking 700 horsepower range, but it makes decent power for what it is. For doing absolutely nothing except plugging something into my OBD2 port, I really can't complain. So on this car, I've also got the subwoofer in the back. And let me tell you, subwoofers are, I don't know about you guys personally, but for me, such a difficult thing to install in the car. And not in the sense of, oh, I gotta run the wires and I gotta set everything up. Well, I guess, yeah, you have to set everything up. The hardest part is tuning the subwoofer to fit the sound system that you're putting it to. So like, I have a 12-inch kicker sub in the back, and I have another video on that if you'd like to watch that. But it was in my car for months and it just didn't sound right. So I brought it back to the company I got it from, or that put it in for me, and was like, hey, can we do something about this? And they said, yeah, well, it's always a personal preference. We'll tune it as many times as you want. We're not going to charge you. We're not going to even hassle you at all. Just bring it in and we'll change it for you. Tell us exactly what you want. So I was going back 3 or 4 times and it just wasn't how I wanted. So on my old cars, I had so much trouble tuning the subwoofer that's why I found a company to do it. On my last SI, it sounded fantastic. Well, when they put it in the new car, they changed all the settings on it, and it just didn't sound right. I mean, it was wired wrong up to the factory sub at first, and so they had to fix that and put it on the rear speakers. By the way, you can't put the aftermarket sub on the factory sub line level for anyone who's trying to do that. It just doesn't work in Hondas. They EQ the sub so hard that if you put in an aftermarket sub, it's not gonna work. It's gonna have only the very low end bass, and I'm talking like miss out on like 70% of the bass frequencies, and it just sounds absolutely horrible. So I've spent the last, I don't know, probably month and a half or so trying to tune the subwoofer myself, and I've finally gotten it so close. But it's like, at this point, I go to make one change and I'm like, no, that sounds worse. So I guess I gotta leave it where it's at. when I had my Honda Pilot, which I still have, and have an aftermarket radio in it, I can set off all the cutoff frequencies and the slope of it and everything straight from the radio, so it's all digital, which is nice. When you have little dials, it's not as fun. Or I should say, it's not as precise. So it just doesn't hit as hard, it's not tuned 100% perfectly, and it's not as fun for me. Driving with the windows down in the summer, I mean, my mirror, if I turn the subwoofer up, just shakes like there's no tomorrow and completely falls down and angles down. So the subwoofer was kind of a thing where I love having the sub in, but it just takes a while to set up, and now that it's set up well, it's flawless. So I noticed on my 2018 Civic Si that the brakes in the front warped after about a year of owning the car. And I'm not sure I understand why that happened. I didn't really drive the car that hard. It went to the track one day and did 2 laps on a 3-mile track, but I never went above like 85 miles an hour, and I wasn't hitting the brakes that much in order to slow down for turns because I was only going about 80 something. So I don't know, my old car, I had so many issues with the brakes. They were warped like a year in, and I couldn't figure out why. The new one I know has disc brakes, and if someone could leave a comment, let me know. Did the 2018 SI have vented disc brakes in the front, or were they just regular rotors like the back of our car has? Because these brakes feel a lot better on this car than they did on my old one. And I don't know if anyone knows why. I've been trying to look at it online, but I haven't really seen anyone that's had a 2018 SI and then a 2020 SI to compare. So I put the car into sport mode. I'm in 4th gear, going down to 3rd. I think the best bang for your buck that I put on this car and was actually the intake. For $291, it just makes the car sound more alive. And I know after looking at my fuel trims and everything like that, that it's not the most perfect intake, but compared to the other like PRL intake, it's what, $100 and something cheaper than that, and it still gives you all the same engine noises you're looking for. It gives you maybe a slight increase in power. I don't think it does anything as far as bring the intake temperatures down. I mean, it's hot out today. It's 86 degrees. I started the car when I started this video, so it's been less than 10 minutes, and my intake temperature too after the intercooler is already 102 degrees. So, I mean, I think the intercooler is a bigger issue than the intake. I think the intake just adds a really nice sound to the car, which I really like. So let me know what you guys think of your SIs. I'm sure most of you that follow me and watch these videos have an SI. Most likely a 10th gen. That seems where a lot of people are leaving comments saying, my SI does this, my SI does that. And so let me know what you guys think. I mean, if you've tuned it and you really like it, then let me know. And let me know how you feel about driving a car once you've K-tuned it. Maybe some people have the money and they don't even think about it. Like, I'm not one of those people. When I tuned my car and changed a lot of things on it, it definitely made it a little more nerve-wracking to drive this car. Doesn't mean I don't drive it a lot, but I drive this car quite a bit, especially for work and things like that. But I don't know, let me know what you guys think, because I'm not 100% sure tuning this car was 100% for me.